Yeah, and in terms of the kind of skill sets that you needed back in those days, when you look at procurement teams now, from a kind of external consulting perspective, what do you see has changed in terms of the requirements within the skill sets for people with procurement? Has anything changed?
Um, I don't think a great deal has changed. I mean, ultimately, I think, yeah, look, there's loads more tools available now. There's loads of models that weren't around 20 years ago, all that kind of stuff. But the fundamentals of procurement, as far as I'm concerned, is about relationships. It's about establishing credible relationships with your partners in the business, so that you can get stuff done. And um, I don't think that has changed. I don't think it ever will change. Um, and I think, if in my experience, if more procurement people kind of had that mindset that, why are we here? We are here as a support function for the business. We're there to help. We're not there to drive our own initiatives. We're there to help. Now, that might be because the business might want to save money. They might want to reduce cost. Great. Well, that's something that procurement typically get excited about. But it might not be that. The business might want to drive revenue, or they might want to drive innovation, or any of those things. And then procurement have to help the business do those things. So, um, in order to do that, you've got to be able to develop relationships with people. Firstly, to understand what it is you need to help them on, and secondly, so they trust you that actually this guy can add some value here, um, and this team can add some value. So I don't think that will ever change. I think the ability to build relationships and credibility um, is crucial to get stuff done, and I think that will always be the case.
Yeah, and I guess it's very much acting as a link between the business and its external resource function, and making that part of the wider organisation capacity, as it were. And as you say, relationships are extremely important to that, particularly when you talk about things like innovation. For innovation to happen, it has to be the right environment.
Mhm.
But I think really it's never been more important in terms of the relationships and the trust that exists within supply chains than what we've seen over the last 12 months. I mean, if you look at like for example, the medical supply chains, I know there's at the moment I saw something in the news today saying vaccine supplies in the UK may be delayed because a shipment coming from it. It's incredible the way that the supply chain has operated, and the amount
Yeah.
of money that's gone through the supply chain globally is just absolutely staggering. But I think it's also shone a light on the importance of procurement and that wider management of supply chain as a resource for governments and organisations alike.
I think you're right. I think it has shone a light on procurement. But what it's uncovered, I think, is there are real extremes in what you see under that light. So I think in some cases you're seeing some really good examples of what I've been talking about, where procurement are effectively what I like to say, describe them as like commercial problem solvers. Totally ingrained in the fabric of the company, involved in pretty much everything, and sort of adding that kind of commercial nous to the conversations, and that kind of project management. That's on one hand. On the other hand, I think what the light has discovered, is that there's still a lot of procurement people who are frankly not very good. Not always their fault, but really kind of operational, transactional, doing stuff that arguably could be automated, um, being very rigid, being very blinkered, um, you know, be not engaging, not speaking to stakeholders, not building relationships. So I think in some ways it's helped the profession, that focus, but in some ways it's just highlighted the fact that I think there's a real variability in the quality of people in this profession, probably like any profession, but I don't know about the other ones.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely see, from a tech perspective, we definitely see the hindrance that a lot of organisations have around having manual processes, particularly in services, where the adoption of tools is at a very early stage. But do you think there's also a hindrance in some cases from the kind of direction of the senior, the board, the way the board run the company, in the sense of how much do they let procurement in? How much do they have them as a trusted advisor and a fixer and a facilitator within the business that allows them to, exactly as you described before, support the business, support function, but a very important support function? How often is it that that's hindered by them being seen as a marginalized function, it's almost like a bolt-on rather than something that's integral?
Well, I think it depends on the company and the culture. It's still a common thing that I hear and that I experience is about procurement complaining that we don't have a seat at the top table. That's the common complaint you hear. And my answer to that is always, well, why should you be there? It's very easy to think, well, of course we should be there, but okay, well, why? If the company, look, let's face it, the executives in any company are not going to be daft, right? So if they think that you're going to add value, they will ask you to get involved in stuff. The fact that you're not there means that you haven't convinced them yet. It's not some sort of vendetta. It's just simply that you haven't been very good at selling or convincing them the value that you're offering. And I've seen it where, companies where procurement have been almost the first person at the table. But equally, I've seen it at companies where they barely get a look in. And it all comes down to that ability to communicate, really, I think. Communicate what it is you're doing and also make sure that you're doing the right things as a team. So you need some direction from whoever's running your team. But you've got to be making sure that you're helping the business. Going back to what I said earlier, really, what is the business objectives that you're supporting? Is if you're focusing on cost reduction because procurement people are obsessed with it, and the company's focusing on revenue growth, why would you expect to? Is cost reduction going to help revenue growth? Well, it might. It might, because might mean that you can sell stuff cheaper, and then you sell more of it. But it might not. Perhaps if procurement were more involved in getting their supply chains more involved in, I don't know, innovation or being quicker to market, that might help with revenue growth more, and you might find you're at the table. So I think it comes down to that level of maturity.
Totally agree, and it's all about demonstrating value to the business. Like you say, any C-suite that have got a procurement team that are jumping up and down and showing loads of value and loads of opportunity, and the C-suite are ignoring them, well, then that's more fool them. But yeah, I think two things I want to pick up from that I think excellent points are. One is, in terms of showing value, that's where things like automation are crucial, because otherwise the clever people that are in procurement are just transacting rather than operating in any strategic type of manner. So it's a question of automating the things that should be automated, and actually clever procurement people using their communication, negotiation, organizational skills to really take that information and build processes that they can achieve the objectives, whatever they may be: cost reduction, greater return on investment, revenue growth, whatever the business objectives are, which, I'd like to think that businesses are generally pretty good at communicating those operational goals, organizational goals, but I think in a lot of cases that's something that needs tightening up as well.